Well, Connor, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, what a magnificent evening, and fantastic to be honoured in the same ceremony as Dame Joan Collins, a landmark of our culture. Where is Joni? And easily my most popular columnist when I was editor of The Spectator. The readers loved you because you wrote so absolutely beautifully. And listen, talking of awards, folks, I've got a feeling that this time next year, the Norwegian Nobel Committee are going to find themselves in an embarrassing position where they come under overwhelming pressure to make an award to a certain conservative politician, when they still want to resist, as they did this year, with every fibre of their woke, politically correct Scandinavian being. And so I have the perfect solution for their embarrassment, because they could, of course, go for another Western leader with even more outrageously pineapple-coloured hair than the current occupant of the White House, a leader equally capable of driving the left into paroxysms of carpet-chewing frenzy as the current president, but whose credentials, if properly assessed by the Oslo Committee, are better not just than any living politician, but better than almost any politician, better than any politician I can think of in the last 50 years. If there was one Western leader who deserved the Nobel Prize for Peace, but who would, of course, never have dreamed of being so brash as to advertise her candidacy or promote her own cause, it is, of course, Margaret Hilda Thatcher. She liberated the Falkland Islands. She freed and incidentally freed the people of Argentina from a brutal dictatorship. And yes, and above all, she ended the Cold War. She put paid to the gulags. She called time on the KGB, and she brought hope and joy and a better life to millions of people in Eastern Europe, hundreds of millions of people in Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union, and she ended the terror of families who had learned to fear the knock of the secret police on their doors in the night, and she ended that conflict, the Cold War, not through guile or diplomacy or by muddling through the middle. She did it by strength, by standing up to the totalitarian regimes, and in the end, breaking them by the sheer force of her will and her intellect. She broke them, or helped to break them above all, by the continual crushing and unanswerable object lesson of her free market beliefs and the obvious superiority of those principles in satisfying human needs. And she did it by standing up not just to Soviet Russia, but to all those in Britain and around Europe, and there were quite a few who were so foolish as to try to make excuses for tyranny. And by heaven, we need Margaret Thatcher's clarity and logic today, because it feels as if this country, under this appalling Labour government, this wonderful country, is being slowly brought to its knees. Debt out of control, spending out of control, the cost of government borrowing at a 30-year high, and Rachel Reeves preparing once again to cosh us with her doom loop economics. So we actually have people fleeing this country for the first time since I was a child in the 1970s. Frankly, I'm looking around this amazing audience here tonight, a fantastic gathering that has come here to celebrate Margaret Thatcher. I'm amazed to see so many wealth creators still in our city, still in the UK, my friends, because talented people are not just fleeing to Dubai. I met a lot of Dubai people just now. Dubai, the 17th biggest British city. They're fleeing to Milan, to Portugal. They're going to Belgium. When Mrs. Thatcher went to Bruges to make that great speech in 1989, did she think that 35 years later, people would be scarpering from London, fleeing an economy she had so brilliantly emancipated and galvanized, and seeking refuge amongst the moule-munching Belgies? I don't think so. And when you look at the state of the Charles, I've had my old friend, the president, the former Prime Minister of Belgium, is here tonight. And he will bear witness to the accuracy of what I have to say. When you look at the state of the UK economy, it feels exactly like the lead-up to 1979, that pivotal moment. And when you look around the world, it feels like we're back in the Cold War, with the autocracies meeting in Shanghai to cock a snook at the West in that Addams Family lineup of global Uber creeps that we saw assembled by Xi Jinping, and with the revanchist Moscow engaged in the most vicious and brutal war of the last 80 years, killing innocent Ukrainians, bombing them in their flats this very night while we're having this dinner. We've got Russian drones in the skies above Poland, Russian jets over Estonia, Russian cyber attacks crippling the British car industry that Margaret Thatcher did so much to revive. And so we need her now. We need her spirit and we need her resolve. And we need her to fix Putin with her basilisk gaze and with her breathy but irresistible contralto voice to tell the ex-KGB man, Mr. Putin, the same truth that she once delivered to his forebears in Moscow, that he cannot and will not win, that democracy will always beat totalitarianism and freedom will always beat tyranny. And we need as a nation, as the West, to recover the sheer cojones of Margaret Thatcher, because it was Thatcher who defied the left and, by the way, some of the power-light right, including Enoch Powell himself, in standing shoulder to shoulder with Ronald Reagan. And she made this country, the UK, into the indispensable partner in the build-up of Western defenses, from the difficult decision to take cruise and Pershing missiles to the Strategic Defense Initiative. And throughout that period in the 1980s, she did not listen to the moaning minis of the left and their claptrap about NATO and how we should be careful not to provoke the Kremlin. Remember that? She didn't listen to all those who said we must not poke the bear. On the contrary, she poked that bear and handbagged that bear so comprehensively that the brute gave up and went home. And thanks to her courage, that decade ended with the fall of the Soviet Union and the birth of at least 23 new nations. 23 populations released from captivity, thanks partly to her bravery. And I know that she was very proud of her children, one of whom is about to address you. And we're all very proud of our children. I've got a few. But she was the co-parent. She was the co-parent of 23 countries. And that is an astonishing achievement. We need her spirit now, because I think she would be utterly revolted and enraged to hear that some people, naming no names, are now blaming NATO for bear poking. Can you think of what I'm thinking of? And blaming NATO for giving sanctuary to those countries that had been oppressed and indeed attacked by Russia. And blaming Western insensitivity and NATO expansionism for triggering the war in Ukraine. She would have been enraged because she would have seen with her icy clarity and command of the facts that such people, naming no names, are simply parroting the Kremlin's talking points. And she would have been appalled because anyone who blames NATO for the war is suggesting that the Ukrainian people should not have the freedom to choose their own destiny as a sovereign and independent people, to join whatsoever international organization they choose. A freedom that every country in the world, including ours, including Russia, recognized in 1991. And she would see the truth that those Ukrainians are fighting for their own freedom, and they are fighting also for freedom and democracy around the world, not least across the whole of the former perimeter of the former Soviet Union and in the South China Seas. And that was her insight. And what would she be saying now if we were so lucky as to have her talking to the President of the United States in the Oval Office? Can you imagine how the conversation would go? She would fix the President with her mesmerizing blue eyes, just as she once went to Aspen, Colorado, to stiffen the spine of George Bush after Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait, remember? And what would she say? She would say, Donald, this is no time to go wobbly. And insofar as the US position on Ukraine has occasionally wobbled, and insofar as the President has occasionally wobbled, in his view, I think both the US position and the President would acquire a sudden and startling rigidity, which would be a good thing. And if Thatcher were here today, I believe that thanks to her urgings, the West would now be collectively putting such pressure on Putin as to make him end this miserable and pointless war. And she would be giving all the sleek, suited Western leaders a kick in their sleek behinds. And we could do it. Number one, we should get on and unfreeze that $300 billion shell that is held in a Belgian bank account. I'm sorry to get back. I love Belgium. I used to live there. Fantastic country. But what's it doing there? Been there for years. $250, $300 billion that should be given. It's Putin's money. It should be unfrozen now. Give it to Ukraine to help the Ukrainians. We should send the missiles. Send the missiles now. Send the missiles now that they need to take out those bases in Russia from which Putin is launching his horrendous, barbaric attacks on innocent Ukrainian civilians. Give them now the long-range missiles. Give them the Tomahawks. Give them the 1,000 German Taurus missiles. I mean, what does Germany need 1,000 Taurus cruise missiles for anyway? Take out Luxembourg. What's the point of it? Give them to Ukraine. And we need to drive that shadow fleet of sanction-busting oil tankers, Putin's shadow fleet, off the seas. And if one of them should find its way to Davy Jones' locker, that would be no bad thing. We should follow Trump's example and penalize financially those who are still buying huge quantities of Russian hydrocarbons, thereby funding Putin's war machine. And as for the famous coalition of the willing, the force of European and other troops who are eventually to go and put boots on the ground in Ukraine, what are they waiting for? Under no circumstances will they be there in a war-fighting role. And given that there are plenty of places in Ukraine, as I'm sure many friends here who have been to Ukraine can testify, many places that are completely safe, they should go now and get on with their work in planning and logistics and training and so on. Just to make this point, that Ukraine is and always will be a free country. And it is up to the Ukrainians to decide which troops they invite onto their soil, and not up to Vladimir Putin. And if we wait for Putin to approve the operation, which seems to be the current policy, the coalition of the willing will be the coalition of the waiting, my friends. Above all, we need to rediscover Thatcherite clarity and tell Putin that the objectives of the West are Ukraine's objectives. And that is victory. Because it is only when he hears that explicitly that he will make peace. My friends, the reason we celebrate the 100th anniversary of the birth of Margaret Thatcher today, this wonderful dinner, for which I thank you very much, is not just because she made peace, but above all, because with Ronald Reagan, she won. That's the key point. And the only reason she won is because she had the courage when it counted. The war in Ukraine, believe me, is the decisive conflict of the early 21st century upon which we are all going to be judged for how we handled it. And the best way to help those Ukrainians to win as fast as possible and to end the pointless suffering is for the West to recover the courage and spirit of Margaret Thatcher. Thank you all very much. Glory to Ukraine and glory to Margaret Thatcher.